Ervino's head raised up and his eyes darted to where Justin stood, stretching his stiffened legs and aching back. Ervino turned his head in the direction of the rock and began clumsily edging his way toward it. "What should I do?" Justin asked the snake frantically as he squatted again behind the rock. "Huh? What should I do?"
"Chill, dude,"
the snake hissed.
"He isn't gonna hurt you. Ervino's cool."
Ervino continued to creep closer, pausing only to crane his neck and peer over the rock. The snake boldly slithered away from Justin.
"Hey, bro, what's happening?"
the snake asked Ervino, wiggling toward the Werloobee's enormous webbed feet.
"Congrats, my main man. Look at you all buff and proud now. Best looking with the best cooking. Hey, speaking of which, you wouldn't believe how this dude over here went out on a limb for you. A snake talking about limbs, get it?"
Ervino's eyes crossed and his head cocked to one side. He listened intently to the snake, glancing curiously over at Justin.
"This crazy dude had 3 wishes that I could grant him, but instead of using those wishes on himself, he used his wishes on you."
The snake then explained everything that had happened, from Justin stepping on him to Justin's 3 wishes. Ervino whimpered softly and began to wring his hands. He rocked back and forth in place for a few seconds and then started to take wobbly steps toward Justin.
Ah!
The snake shrieked. Its body was trapped under the heel of Ervino's foot as the Werloobee continued to lumber toward Justin. Ervino wrapped his long, thin arms around Justin and squeezed him tightly.
"Not again,"
the snake hissed.
"Ervino, man, you gotta watch where you're going. You got 3 wishes coming your way now. But please don't take as long as the dude did, okay?"
Ervino released Justin from his embrace and slowly turned around to look down at the snake. Half of its body was flattened and pressed into the ground. Ervino grunted twice before whistling through his broad and hooked nose. His large, soulful eyes blinked a few times before he erupted into one final, high-pitched wail.
"Hey, man, thanks,"
the snake said, before the squashed part of its body was surrounded by swirls of misty air. The flattened part of the snake's body swelled to match the rest of him.
"I've never run into more selfless folk than you 2 dudes,"
the snake said.
"Ervino, still got 2 more wishes."
"I'd like to go home," Justin interrupted. "Could Ervino use one of his wishes to get me back home?" The snake looked over at Ervino.
"Hey, I'd say it's only fair, man. This dude was only thinking about you before he used up all 3 of his own wishes. It'll be a nice payback if you return the favor."
Ervino's eyes opened wide and slowly filled with tears. He reached an arm out to Justin and placed his hand on Justin's shoulder. He turned his head back toward the snake and grunted a few times.
"Ervino wants to know if you're absolutely sure you want to go home. Hey, he likes you. He doesn't want you to leave,"
the snake said to Justin. Justin looked at Ervino's eyes. He nodded his head slowly and said, "I'm sorry, but yes, I'm sure." Huge tears slid down Ervino's wide, flat face. He looked down at the snake and paused before nodding his head with one last grunt.
"All right, man, it's showtime,"
said the snake.
"He says he'll do anything for his only real friend."
Suddenly, both the snake and Ervino disappeared from view as Justin found himself surrounded by bright white steam. The steam, warm and thick, crept into Justin's mouth and nostrils and filled his lungs. Justin felt his body grow limp and numb, and gradually he sank into a deep, restful slumber.
Goon, wimp.
The sounds of shouting and laughter startled Justin. He lifted his head away from a pane of glass and wiped some dried saliva off the corner of his mouth and chin. Where was Ervino? Where was the snake? Justin sat straight up in what he realized was a cushioned seat on his school bus. Hecklers from the back of the bus were throwing hand-folded paper airplanes and spitting slimy cherry pits in Justin's direction. A hand reached over the back of Justin's seat and set an empty milk carton on the top of his head. He angrily swatted it away. His mind was still somewhat asleep. He ran his tongue over his teeth, trying to get some moisture flowing into his dry mouth. He wondered how he got to where he was. He wondered where he had been. He thought about Ervino. Had he made the last of his 3 wishes? And if so, what was it? What could he possibly still want or need, seeing that he had the admiration and respect of everyone and anyone he had ever known? Slippery cherry pits continued to fly toward Justin. Most soared past his head and bounced off of the back of the seat in front of him. Occasionally, one would land in his hair, and he'd have to fish it out with his thumb and forefinger. He felt another empty milk carton being balanced on the center of his scalp. Again, he irritably swept his hand across his head and knocked the carton to the floor. A shrill howl suddenly cut through the commotion and brought all of the children to silence. Justin's head swung around, and he found his eyes locking with those of an enormous blonde-haired boy, standing in front of the emergency exit door at the back of the bus. The child's piercing blue eyes shifted away from Justin and narrowed like a cat's as he started to walk between the seats and up the bus aisle. The pranksters froze in their seats as the large boy stalked past them. A broad smile swept across the boy's face when he eased his way into an empty seat next to Justin. Still smiling, he winked at him.
"Name's Irving,"
the boy said.
"You can call me Irv for short."
He held a small cardboard carton of grape juice out to Justin. Justin took it, placed his dry lips on the edge of a tiny sipping straw, and quickly began to drink. The sugary juice trickled easily down Justin's throat. After one final gulp, Justin licked his newly moistened lips, enjoying the delicious aftertaste of the beverage. His new friend sat quiet and still, a content expression on his face. Justin smiled as well, thinking of the sweetness of a wish and the splendor of a dream.